The morning of the hearing should have been routine. My case against the HOA was already strong. I had proof of their harassment, neighbors lined up to testify, and my attorney confident we'd finally end years of Karen's bullying. But when I walked into the courthouse lobby, the atmosphere was thick with whispers. Karen stood there in her oversized blazer, her smug face glowing with self-importance, clutching a thick folder of documents. She looked at me with that oily grin and hissed, "Game over. The court has already ruled against you. You're wasting your time." I frowned, confused. "That's impossible," I said. "The hearing hasn't even started." She threw back her head and laughed, her belly shaking, then waved the papers in my face. "Here it is, signed by the judge himself. The HOA is entitled to seize your property for violations. Once this is filed, you and your family are gone." My stomach dropped. The pages bore official stamps, legal jargon, even the judge's signature. For a second, my faith faltered until I caught the smudge of ink bleeding at the bottom, the kind of mistake no real court clerk would ever let slide. Before I could respond, she marched to the clerk's desk, slamming the folder down with a theatrical flourish. "File this immediately," she ordered, as if the courthouse was her personal office. The clerk blinked, flipping through the pages, her face twisting in confusion. I stepped forward quickly. "You need to verify those documents," I said, my voice sharp. "They're fake. The judge hasn't ruled on anything yet." Karen spun around, her cheeks blotchy red, and shrieked, "Liar. He's lying to cover himself. Don't listen to him, file it now." The tension spread fast. People waiting in line leaned closer, phones raised. My attorney arrived just in time, grabbing the papers and skimming them with the speed of someone trained to spot lies. His eyes narrowed. "This isn't just suspicious," he said loudly. "This is forgery. The formatting is wrong, the signature is copied, and the case number doesn't even exist. You've just committed a felony, Karen." The crowd gasped. Karen's smirk faltered, her lips twitching. "No, it's real. The judge gave it to me personally." But before she could spin another lie, the doors to the courtroom opened, and out walked Judge Rowe himself, black robes swishing, face stern. He held a folder in his hands, the real case file. His gaze swept the lobby, falling on Karen, who suddenly looked like a deer trapped in headlights. "What's this I hear about forged documents being filed under my name?" he asked, his voice cutting like a blade. Karen's mouth flapped, no words coming out. The clerk quickly handed him the folder she had dropped off. He opened it, scanning the pages, and within seconds his jaw tightened. "These are forgeries," he thundered. "My name has been falsified. My signature copied. This is contempt of court, fraud, and obstruction of justice." The room went dead silent. Karen tried to laugh, her voice breaking. "It's a mistake, just a mistake. I didn't mean someone gave me these papers, I was told." But Judge Rowe wasn't listening. He turned to the deputies stationed nearby. "Take her into custody immediately." The lobby exploded with gasps and whispers as two deputies grabbed Karen's flabby arms and snapped handcuffs onto her wrists. She screamed, thrashing, "No, you can't do this. I'm the HOA president. I make the rules here. This is my court." But her words sounded pathetic now, drowned out by the clink of steel and the cheers rising from the crowd of neighbors who had suffered under her reign. Karen's shrieks echoed down the marble hallway as the deputies dragged her away, her shoes scraping against the floor. Her hair was wild, her face blotchy red, spittle flying as she screamed, "This is a conspiracy. He set me up. I am the law here." The crowd of neighbors and onlookers erupted into a mixture of cheers and laughter, their phones capturing every second. For years they had swallowed their anger under Karen's thumb, but now the sight of her in cuffs felt like the first crack of thunder after a drought. The hearing that followed wasn't about me, Anna Marie, it was about her. The state prosecutor entered the courtroom with a file so thick it looked like a brick, the product of years of complaints against Karen that had gone unheeded until she made the fatal mistake of forging a judge's signature. The forged order had been her undoing, but the prosecutor revealed that it was just the tip of the iceberg. Bank statements showed how she siphoned HOA fees into her personal account, spending them on luxury handbags, resort vacations, and payments to her brother-in-law labeled as legal consulting. Emails surfaced, exposing her bragging to allies. "They'll believe anything I wave in their faces." Nobody ever questions authority when you shout loud enough. The courtroom gasped at each revelation. Karen sat in chains, her arrogance flickering like a dying flame. She tried to interject, her voice shrill, claiming it was all paperwork mistakes, but every word only tightened the noose. Then came the twist that shocked even us. She hadn't acted alone. Another board member, a man named Trent, flipped under pressure and testified that Karen had orchestrated a scheme to seize property from families who couldn't afford her endless fines. They had planned to fake court orders to pressure people into selling at low prices. My fence and property had just been her rehearsal. She intended to do the same to half the block. Judge Rowe's face was like stone as he listened, his eyes never leaving Karen. When the final witness spoke, a single mother sobbing as she recounted how Karen threatened to evict her for letting her child ride a scooter on the sidewalk the dam broke. The judge leaned forward, his voice cold as steel. "Mrs. Whitmore, you forged my name, defrauded your neighbors, and sought to turn this court into your personal hammer of intimidation. That ends now." He struck the gavel and pronounced the verdict: guilty of fraud, forgery, obstruction, embezzlement, and conspiracy. The sentence was immediate: 8 years in prison, full restitution, and a lifetime ban from serving in any community organization. Karen collapsed into her chair, sobbing, her voice cracking. "No, please. I was only protecting order. I was keeping things perfect." But her pleas sounded hollow, and no one believed them anymore. The deputies hauled her away as the crowd erupted in applause. The sound was thunderous, rolling through the chamber like a wave of liberation. For the first time in years, the neighborhood felt light again. What happened afterward was nothing short of transformation. The HOA dissolved under court supervision, its accounts audited, and the stolen funds returned to the community. With the money, we repaired sidewalks, planted gardens, and built a playground in the lot Karen had once threatened to seize. The garage where she kept her trophies of power was emptied and turned into a library box and tool shed for anyone to borrow from. Her name, once spat in whispers, was now only mentioned as a cautionary tale. At the first community gathering after her sentencing, we met by the courthouse lawn. Long tables were covered in food, children ran freely, and laughter rose where fear had once lingered. My grandfather, cane in hand, stood and raised a toast. "To truth," he said, his eyes shining. To the neighbors who had the courage to stand, and to never letting one loud voice drown out the rest of us again. The cheer that followed was deafening. People who had been strangers were now allies, bonded by the scars of tyranny and the joy of freedom. The image of Karen being cuffed on the spot by the very judge she tried to impersonate became a symbol. It spread online, shared thousands of times with captions like, "This is what happens when entitlement meets justice." Even national outlets picked up the story, using it as a lesson in how unchecked power can corrupt and how ordinary people, when united, can tear down a bully's empire. As I sat by my rebuilt fence weeks later, listening to the sound of kids laughing by the new playground, I thought about how close we had come to losing everything. Karen had believed fear was stronger than truth. She believed lies could outlast evidence. She believed arrogance was the same as authority. And in the end, those very beliefs chained her wrists and stripped her of the power she worshipped. And maybe that's the real story here, not just her downfall, but our rise. Because Karen didn't just fail, she taught us that silence feeds bullies, but truth starves them. That even the loudest voice collapses when people stand together. And that no one, not even an HOA tyrant, stands above the law. So I'll ask you, when someone like Karen abuses power, fabricates lies, and tries to weaponize fear, what is the right response? Do you stay silent and let them rule unchecked? Or do you fight back, expose the truth, and watch justice take them down? We fought back. What would you do?